channel. After the lecture, we will have a Q&A session, so please use the chat function to write your questions and we will read them out loud. If you don't have access to the chat, you can raise the digital hand. Our speaker today is Professor Dorota Michułka, and the lecture will be moderated by Mateusz Świetlicki, a founding member of the center. Let me also thank to my other colleague Bożena Chojka for helping to co-organize this lecture. Once again, thank you all for joining us this evening, and Mateusz, please introduce our special guest.
Thank you, Ella. I would like to introduce Professor Dorota Michułka, who is Associate Professor at the University of Wrocław's Institute of Polish Studies and head of the Department of Polish Language Education. She is a member of the Polish Academy of Sciences, Section of Education, the IRCL, and the Advisory Board of the Child in the Book conferences. She served as a lecturer in Polish literature, culture, and language at Tampere University in Finland from 2000 to 2005, and has held many research fellowships in the United States and Germany. She is the author of more than 220 publications, including monographs, edited volumes, and articles focusing on children's literature and culture, literary education, and reader response theory. She is the editor-in-chief of the international journal Filotechnos and the principal investigator of 2 research grants, Growing Up in Transnational Families, Good Childhood from the Children's Perspective, National Science Center Poland / German Research Foundation, and Self-Positioning in Transnational Spaces, Children's Narratives and Narratives about Children Living Transnationally, German Research Foundation / National Science Center Poland. I would also like to highlight that Professor Michułka is also one of the co-founding members of our center, and now she is a member of our advisory board, and we're very happy that even though she's no longer a member of the program board, she's still a part of our center. And I think that everyone who has met Professor Michułka knows that she is an exceptional scholar and she is an exceptional colleague, and I'm happy and I'm thrilled that she is here with us today, and I'm looking forward to hearing her talk. Dorota, the floor is yours, and once again, thank you for saying yes to our invitation. It's a great honor to have you here.
Thank you very, very much for inviting me. Thank you, Mateusz Świetlicki and Ella Jamrus-Stolarska. I'm happy to be here and to share with you some thoughts connected with our grants, which Mateusz mentioned already. So I would like to just start with presentation. So let me do, and you will tell me if you see.
Okay.
If you see my presentation. Wait.
Okay, it's loading.
Is it okay? Do you see?
Yes, it's perfect. It's perfect.
Okay, so this is the full screen. I don't see you,
yes,
but you see me. So
yes,
we have a contact. Okay. So the title of the presentation or lecture today didn't change. It's Crossing Boundaries in Search of a New Migration Identity, Contemporary Polish Young Adults Narratives from the Perspective of Transnational Families. The lecture was prepared, as Mateusz mentioned, as a part of 2 international projects. I have to tell something about this research, Growing Up in Transnational Families, Good Childhood from the Children's Perspective, financed by National Science Center and Deutsche Forschungsgemeinschaft Beethoven Classic 4. And the second is we finished the previous one after 3 years, and we start a new one for next 2-3 years. Self-positioning in transnational spaces, children's narrative and children's about children and narratives about children living transnationally, financed by the same foundations. This project has name with Unisono. The research carried out in both projects is a part of discussions on the changing cultural image of the child and childhood from the perspective of migrant identity and family studies, and draws on 3 academic disciplines. This is very important for us, that is interdisciplinary. The sociology of childhood, the new sociology childhood, in fact, literary studies. We also focus on narratology. And the second project, we try to focus also on narratology and humanities education and didactics, including empirical studies, but I will not present today empirical studies research because we are still working on that. We have been working on both grants for almost 5 years. It's a long time, and we have collected around 60 contemporary Polish novels, fiction, mainly fiction, for children and young adults in our text corpus. But it's still growing. I think it's started 5 years ago, but we are finding, we try to look for new texts, and so it could be that we will find even more texts. But today I will analyze, of course, only few of them. So I have to repeat, I'm happy that I can share the parts of this research, and I'm really looking forward to your questions and comments because we are still working on that. We will start with historical perspective, changes and evolution of the literary image of the immigrant in Polish culture. We have to emphasize, especially 19th century, emigration of the Romantic period, patriotic perspective, awareness of isolation and exclusion compounded by inability to return to the country. As you know, Poland was not on the map of Europe for 123 years due to partitions. We lost independence, the partitions made by Russia and Austria. So for Polish literary studies, topos of migration was always important and intensively explored, also for literature for adults. In the 20th century, the literary image of the emigrant changes somewhat, also introducing aspects of the emigrant status, social position, mental state, and emigrant identity into the narrative, not only historical and political context. In the post-war period, after 1945, literature already begins to represent 2 models of conceptualizing the issue. One traditional, which can be described as nostalgic, and the other, as Beata Gromadzka observes, introduce the figure of the emigrant who positively valorizes the culture of the host country as a man for whom breaking with Polishness was a life choice and not only merely a political necessity. As a second issue, I have to present social context of this migration literature, political and social changes as a motivation for migration. So this is 21st century, but also 90s and 20th century. One of the most basic features of the current times is the extraordinary acceleration or intensification and expansion of social changes, especially in Eastern Europe after political change. 1989. Violeta Danielewicz, sociologist, mentions 3 processes that encourage people to leave Poland for work, namely globalization, post-communistic transformation, and European integration. So globalization has redefined the existing perception of identity, showed that identity is subject to change, resulting from the openness of society to new experiences, the diffusion of cultural elements as a result of globalization processes. National identity is giving way to identification with the global society. A counterbalance to such a behavior may be globalization-induced return to the roots of local culture. And in HEF, we found some books which are from Silesia part. So there is this regional perspective. For my analysis of the text on migration, I use, for this part of the research, I use metaphor of border experienced by humans as limits and challenges. in relation to the attempt to approximate and illumination of human existence and its forms of existence within the mondo naturale, natural world, and mondo civile, social world, in the perspective of spatial thinking, geopoetics, border territories, centers and peripheries, in terms of axiology, of course, also, existential ethical in the world of values and psychology, the limits of the human psyche with the role of risk and choice. We're referring here to Zygmunt Bauman and Anthony Giddens, but not only. Boundaries can thus be experienced by humans as both limits as well as challenges. Boundaries as limits close off perspective, while boundaries as challenges open up this perspective. Next issue in my consideration is crossing boundaries as existential ethical challenges, which is visible in the text for young readers. The objective existence of certain boundaries or their subjective perception show identity or inducement to acts of transgression, while at the same time constituting specific components of this ontological allocation in the surrounding material, natural, and socio-cultural world. Within these considerations of existential ethical challenges, there are also migratory journeys crossing the boundaries of different cultural areas, the boundaries of the human psyche, which, and there are some points, which confronts the other, the new, tames the unknown, takes the risk of facing a new reality, makes individual choices, crosses the boundaries of childhood, adolescence, entering adulthood to be responsible and grows up to make decisions, finding a new home or being somewhere in between, but also in some books, which we found last year, returning home after many years of absence. We refer here to discourse of memory. It's very interesting from the perspective of adults. Crossing Boundaries and Poetics of Migration in Poland they published many books already of connected with this topic. The so-called poetics of migration can also be applied to literature for young audience, which would thus be seen as a specific articulation of human displacement. I quote here Przemysław Czampliński. The determinants of displacement and its phases, the distribution of the compulsions of migrations and the distribution of the freedom of movement, the disappearance of regrowth of borders, the portability and non-transferability of cultural baggage, the possibilities of return and the irreversibility of border crossing, the consequences of incomplete departure from one's own culture and incomplete entry into a new culture, movement as compulsion and movement as a model of existence, Czaplinski wrote. According to researchers, migration identity is continuously on the move. It's fluid, it's hybrid, it's cosmopolitan, it's nomadic, it's transnational, and also called transcultural. It's also strongly linked to the concept of traveling memory. I will be referring in some books during analysis to this concept of Astrid Erl. These terms are also connected with, I would say, postmodern view of identity, which is not longer determined by attachment to place, roots, connection to tradition, like in 19th century emigrants literature, but becomes a matter of individual choice. Crossing boundaries, individual stories of the young protagonists, difficult choices, risk and courage. The characters of the contemporary Polish children's and young adults literature on migration are portrayed in the transnational space as characters involved in the taming of the new environment with their own passion. They are also active members of local communities. This is because the stories for young audiences highlight the painful but usually successful process of a child adaptation to a new place and the young person's mental finding himself in a new environment. They emphasize issues of individualization, exposing the individual fate of the young protagonist, difficult choices, risk and courage. Indeed, children like the adults, caregivers have to make difficult decisions relating to new migration situation. Literary narratives, I have to emphasize, are usually in this corpus of our text, realistic, social and moral novels immersed in psychology, creating psychological portraits of characters, revealing inner ethical dilemmas. Presentations of migratory identity in our projects refers to mainly also to family studies perspective at different levels, both sociocultural and economic, political, refer to images of ideas, beliefs and opinions, certain customs and morals relate to particular axiological system, reveal complex family relationships and practices, and the child process of adaptation in a new culture and local environment. Reveal references to everyday life, expose a sense of belongings and identification, show the desire to maintain ties with loved one across borders and multi-generational perspective. So we can say that transnational reality is itself a way of life, says Krystyna Slany, sociologist. So spatial remoteness and the separation evoking nostalgia and the memory of the family home strengthens the bonds between loved ones, creating new daily practices in this new space, cultivating certain values and creating new ways of living. Migration expands and develops social relations that are shaped by the place of origin and place of arrival. It's also an indicator of migration capital, generating access to various resources, including useful information. It's also the subjectivity and activism of migrant children as actors embedded in a dynamic process of building practices and managing ties and relationships. We refer here to Polish sociologists, Krystyna Slany, Ślusarczyk, like Polskie Rodziny Narodowe, Dzieci, Rodziny, Instytucje, very interesting research. Migration experiences, local communities, otherness, confrontation, collisions and taming, new modus vivendi and modus adaptandi. Identity is not a monolith. It's a constantly negotiated multiplicity of aspirations, a set of experiences. It's shaped by a continuous adjustment effort, says Beata Gromadzka. Mobility, nomadicity, hybrid and dispersed identities, the ability to make independent identity choices, transnationality is visible in it's very important for our books, transformation of the literary character from the image of the Euro orphans, lost in the new reality of transnational family functioning through liminality towards resourcefulness and resilience. Transnational reality and new model of family in the context of diversity become, in this field of research, a new existential project, as I repeated after Przemysław Czapliński. And now we are coming to the books. Now we are coming to the examples, crossing boundaries of the different cultures and border of adulthood. I divided all our books into 4 categories. I have chosen 4 models of contemporary Polish literature dealing with the construction of an image of a fluid migrant identity from perspective of crossing boundaries. It's 4 different depictions of the dispersed migratory identity connected with migratory separation, which create a new model of transnational families constructed in the cross-border space. The first group of the books, I will show you later the covers of the books, and some of them I will analyze, is, for example, The Boy from Lampedusa by Rafał Witek, Moje Bulerbyn, My Bulerbyn by Gawrylu Kasieńka, Kate. English title is The Weight of Water by Sarah Croissant, show the image of migration from the child's or adolescent's perspective. It emphasizes constructing a new identity in exile, an identity caught up in the confrontation of culture, the language barrier, and the longing for home that remained in Poland, but also take a risk and challenges concerning cross the border and tame a new environment. The second group of examples of migration literature, I would emphasize here, for example, novel by Kosmowska, Samotni.pl, Lonely.pl, presents a rich psychological portraits of children, Euro orphans, teenage protagonists who crossing border of adulthood or become, let's say, mature. For example, Victor, who stays in Poland despite the absence of his parents, he learns life quickly, matures faster, and tries to make adult decisions. Who at the distance tries to also help his frustrated and unhappy mother migrant, unable to cope with the new British reality. The same category and figure of protagonist we can find in the novel Green Martens by Joanna Jagiełło, where the Felix protagonist takes care of his sick grandmother. Some of the books I will analyze later in some slides. The third group of literary examples refer to liminality, heterotopia, fluid continuity, existing somewhere in between, like Kasieńka Kate by Sarah Crossan, Muchy w butelce, Flies in the Bottle, Fried Tablets, Smażone tablety, Pisklak. It shows internal dilemmas related to the choice of place and of residence, axiologically confused adults missing their children left at home. The fourth group of literary examples, it's books which shows childhood from the perspective of adults. It's very interesting, very good prose. Dissolve, Rozpływaj się by Anna Cieślak and Stróbki Scabs by Paulina Jóźwik is constructed as a recollection of childhood memories shown through multiplied adults' characters' perspective. This is rather for young adults, not for children. Migrant identity, all these four categories of texts of migrant identity refer to the context of engagement humanities as described by Richard Nietzsche. We also use this concept quite often. I quote, "The humanities should take up and solve above all socially and civilizationally relevant contemporary problems instead of locking itself in the ivory tower of its anachronistic hermetic issues. The research of the new humanities does not propose a new systemic analysis of the human world, but rather a constellational variety of case studies that show the connections between different ways of thinking, methods, fields of knowledge. They teach, or they are supposed to teach, creative reading that engages not only knowledge, but also experience and the invention and imagination of the reader." It's very interesting also from educational point of view, but I will not develop now this concept. Engagement and resilience. As we observe in the text which I chose here for analysis, books show both the engagement or commitment and resilience of the literary characters. We will emphasize here the notion of resilience, as for example, Magdalena Rembowska-Płóciennik writes. The category of resilience is identified as an important concept in psychology, sociology, and childhood studies. In all these areas, literature plays not only an illustrative and therapeutic role, but also a casual one. It can give children strength. Resilience is the process of developing positive adaptive patterns despite trauma or life difficulties. It allows one to identify and understand the source of the threat and gradually overcome fear and adapt techniques for coping with it individually, as well as strengthen one's own agency, because children are active, as we will see. First category in narratives present contemporary models of childhood and families with experience of migration, separation, confrontation, taming, and adapting. And there are many of such books, but just will emphasize maybe Moje Bulerbyn, My Bulerbyn by Gawryluk, published to 2010, or Mateusz in English School, 2015, or Chłopiec from Lampedusa, Rafał Witek, 2022, or Kasieńka, The Weight of Water by Sarah Crossan. The stories highlight, from this category, the stories highlight the painful but mostly successful process of a child's adaptation to a new place and the child's psychological self-discovery in the new environment. They highlight important moments in the protagonist's biography, the difficult decision of the parents or one of the parents to leave, the departure of the child protagonist abroad with his or her family, the moment of arrival in the new country, showing various situations of confrontation with the new reality, the new country of settlement, and attempts to assimilate into the local environment. The author of the book, The Boy from Lampedusa, Rafał Witek, has brilliantly combined migration. Angelika is a small Polish immigrant, and refugee themes. Tanjin is an 11-year-old refugee from Eritrea. The structural axis of the story is the friendship between Polish protagonists, already an experienced immigrant, and the small African refugee who is washed ashore in Lampedusa by the sea. The children share a common fate: homesickness, loneliness, isolation, exclusion, and the state of living between two spaces, native and foreign. It's like liminality. Crossing boundaries of freedom, sea of life and power of friendship. Again, chłopiec from Lampedusa, illustration by Joanna Rusinek. I chose one illustration. I think it's very interesting for this part of presentation. This image is maintained in calm colors, dominated by the green of the ocean, where the image of water can be seen metaphorically as the sea of life. The tiny child protagonist is drowning that needs to be saved. And the hand of another child, apparently the girl in the story, represents both hope and the unity of their experience and their readiness to support each other and not to be divided by the differences. This illustration complements the verbal narrative, reinforces the existential ethical message of the story, emotionally illuminates it, and expressively supports the symbolic core of the plot. A migrant girl extends her hand to a refugee boy, helping him amidst the sea of life. And the next, it's still chłopiec from Lampedusa, memory of home. The artistic dominant of the story also seems to be children's memories of home. In Angelica's case, it's also a dream of a new, big, beautiful house with a garden, for which her mother is earning money. Tanjin seems surprised and he says houses are not built with money, and recalling his African customs. He says, our house was made of clay. Everyone helped to build it, the whole village, but soldiers came and we had to flee. Mom and dad sold animals and belongings. We walked through the desert. Then smugglers said they had a boat. We paid them to take us to a safe place. The language barrier hinders communication, but the Eritrean boy wants to convey more information to Angelica. Unable to describe reality in words, he draws. The sheet of paper was densely filled with drawings of people, animals, birds, fruits, exotic trees and shapes by the girl did not even recognize. It all seemed to pulsate, push and circle in constant motion, almost spilling off the paper. Tanjin's slender finger jumped from drawing to drawing, and he was showing this. This is my country, this is my family, my village, my home, the market, animals, a snake, sand, the sun, parents, toys made of wire and cans, Aunt Sesuna and Zeudi, and these are soldiers, the road, the sea, palm trees, night, and dangers. And another story, very, in fact, optimistic. The next example of this category is Moje Bulerbyn, My Bulerbyn, written by Barbara Gawryluk, presents crossing boundaries with a writing diary as a self-reflection. Barbara Gawryluk's story, My Bulerbyn, presented from the perspective of the teenage girl Natalia, represents the ideal model of adapting to new migration conditions. The girl's parents leave for Sweden to work in the hospital. They are doctors in the small village, a beautifully furnished house they have with a garden, even company bicycles in the garage, and a stable job. 2 years contract await them. Natalia likes the new place from the beginning. Getting to know Sweden, she feels like she is on the set of a film of her favorite reads. The Polish house reminds her of Villa Śmiesznotka, known to the girl from the story of Pippi Langstrump. The Swedish village community is very friendly and welcoming, so there is no any problems. In addition, the place where the Polish family arrives is home to representativeness of different cultural areas. The newcomers have different professions and their children attend the same school, like a girl from Bolivia, where diversity is nurtured. An attitude of mutual respect, tolerance, and dialogue is fostered. The newcomers seem to blend in quickly and painlessly with their new environment and culture, making friends at school, eating together, trying Swedish food like meatballs, kotbulari, saffron buns. Passions and interests here is the dance, hip hop, because the Natalia loves hip hop, unite children from different parts of the world without any conflicts. So it's idyll, I would say. An interesting structural elements that builds the image of child in exile. We refer again here to Astrid Erl term traveling memory. It's also the memory of the family home in Krakow, the memory of the second generation reinforced by images on photographs referring to family history connected to Lviv even. So it's not a second, it's a second, the third generation memory. It's very interesting. The assimilation of the new reality takes place with the help of the diary, in which the child protagonist writes down one sentence every day, recalls one most important event. For example, meeting peers, new friendship, pursuing one's passions, trying also to name her emotions, express longing, doubts, fears, anxieties, uncertainty, define the state of the liminality and feelings connected with a peculiar, I would say, hanging between two spatially distant worlds. The central point around which the narrative of the story is framed, also on the pages on the diary, becomes the image of home. And I have some sentences from the book. Will it be home? I don't know, but my room in the turret is lovely. Or, she said, I'm afraid my stomach hurts from fear. I want to go home. Oh, she said, I like this room in the turret, but my room is the room in Krakow, although it's smaller and tighter. How to survive these 2 years? The ending of the Gavriluk story already shows a certain balance that the girl manages to create between two worlds, the old Polish world of the past and the new emigrant reality. Crossing boundaries with the passions and the new friends. Natalia emphasizes in her speech that it's not only space and places with which feelings are connected that are important, but she also expresses her fascination with a new world and new people, moments spent together with the former ballerina Selma from Ukraine. There is a strong also top theme of the Ukraine in this book, writes about new friends and her greatest passion, dancing in the Rabarbar Club, the name of the club. There, she also describes events that she feels particularly strongly about. For example, visit to Unibacken in Stockholm, the joyful Santa Lucia Festival, integrating the participants. Here is a fragment in which Natalka, in conversation with her new friend Karina, sums up her several months stay in Sweden. So I will read maybe how she changed. It's very difficult. When I came here, everything was bad, and I missed my friends so much, my grandmother, grandfather, dancing, Krakow, my room, even school, and I still miss it. But it's been a few months now, and I can't imagine that that would have happened if I hadn't met you, Mats or Selma. It's still hard at school, but at Rabarbar is great. And on the top of that, this competition, I can't wait for the final in Stockholm. Do you hear what I am saying? I can't believe in myself. It's going to be fine, Natalka. That's what everyone told me. And I think it's already fine. The attitude of the teenage Natalka can thus be described as follows. It's an attitude different from the painfully felt alienation and desire to return to the homeland, so often expressed in the past emigration literature. The contemporary migrant, also the protagonist of books for young audience, no longer functions as a pole detached from the national community, but above all is an individual. Emigrant has to create himself anew, his identity is subject to transformation under the influence of life of migration experiences. His own self meets and collides with the self of the others. These are other members of the migrant and indigenous communities, as we saw in Moje Bullerben. The migrant has no name, has to name his otherness and accept it. Natalia owes her Swedish home to her participation and engagement with the community. The children's diary entire thus become not only a kind of confession and self-reflection, but also a kind of self-therapy and a picture of unhurried self-discovery. The second category of the text connected with contemporary models of childhood and families with experience of migratory separation show different images of Euro orphanhood, resettlement, displacement, and teenagers growing up faster from perspective of axiologically confused adults frustrated by work abroad, missing their children left behind. I mean the adults. also, and who are frustrated and despair. So I chose some of the books to analyze for analyzing, like Samotni.pl, Lonely.pl by Kosmowska, Ma być czysto, Should be Clean by Anna Cieplak, it's for young adults, Joanna Jagiełło, Green Martens, but also Fried Tablets by Tyszka, and Black Windmill, Szczygielski. But I will present only 2 or 3 of them. Third group of literary examples refer to liminality, heterotopia, fluid continuity, existing somewhere in between. It's like Kashenka, The Flies in Bottles, Fried Tablets, Pisklak, Chiclet, Baby Bird, show internal dilemmas of characters related to the choice of place of residence. And the fourth group, as I mentioned, it's for a little bit older readers, like young adults. Fourth group of literary examples is constructed as a recollection of childhood memories. What unites all the protagonist stories is the fact that parents, due to their status as economic migrants, are absent from the children's life. Their childhood recollections of the past are vague and hazy, dominated by loneliness and longing for self-discovery, love and security. Reconstruction of the past events of the protagonist strengthens their friendship in the present, like Rozpływaj się, Dissolve, or love with a sister, like in the novel Skaps, Strupki by Jóźwik. So despite the setbacks in adult life, protagonist obtained hope for rebuilding, re-establish affectionate relationship with relatives. Memory and the search for one's own identity, the perspective of adult characters, references to the existential and ethical level, questioning the sense of life. Childhood experiences take on the new meanings in the work cited here, as the characters confront difficult and often traumatic memories in the context of affective memory, in the context of autobiographical memory, the model of the scattered family and intergenerational dialogue. The myth of childhood is not, as shown in this book, is not exclusively nostalgic, reminiscent, or idealizing. It's a set. In fact, memory reinforces the self-positioning of the protagonist. In this part of presentation, I will focus on the literary figure of Euro-orphanhood, because I think it's keywords for many of this text. In the social and psychological perspective, images of the loneliness of children left behind after the departure of their parents, the problem of the families with the experience of migratory separation, expose rich psychological portraits of child and adolescent characters, images of psychologically mature adolescent, resourceful and active coping with the new reality in the single parent family or care of grandparents, and parents lost in exile, frustrated and unhappy, in need of financial support but torn internally. First example in this part, crossing, is Agnieszka Tyszka Smażone Tablety, Fried Tablets, crossing boundaries between adults and teenagers, two phases of migration separation between adventure and psychological loneliness. Karolina is the main character. Karolina is a secondary school student. A single teenage mother moves to Italy, and there she starts a new life with a man younger than herself. Mother is happy and ready for change. Karolina stays in her homeland, has friends, wants to finish school, and moves to her grandmother Józefina, whom she has not had the opportunity to get to know better before. Józefina is modern, open-minded and independent, and manages to establish a good rapport with her granddaughter, who in turns out is happy and has no desire at all to leave for her mother, beautiful Tuscany. The theme of migration and separation recurs in the teenagers' conversation, and it shows from two perspectives, which is interesting. On one hand, it does not have a dramatic dimension, rather it refers to mobility, curiosity about the world, visiting new places, and valorized rather positively. On the other hand, one of the novel's protagonists bluntly and concretely comments on the loneliness of the children left behind, the separation of families, and the bleak and uncompromising social reality of migration. It's very sad. I will quote, "A mother is a mother. Even if she lives to earn her bread, she should see her children. There is nothing worse in the world than these European orphans. Oh, I know what I'm saying. Here in Michułka is the village. Such poor children wander from house to house. The mother stays with the Italians, the father with the Germans, and the kids wanders around other people's houses." And next example is zielone martensy, green martens. Here is a quote from Joanna Jagiełło's novel Green Martens, in which the distraught mother, a divorcee who sees her life as a chaotic and works hard abroad, visits her teenage children who are being looked after by their grandmother from time to time. She emotionally reveals to her loved ones the state of her unhappiness, the drama of her longing, the frustration caused by separation, revealing her mental exhaustion and despair. "You can't go off and leave the children like that all the time," says the grandmother to the mother. "It will affect them badly. I tell you again, it's not enough that they don't have a father." "It's not my fault," mother said. "I know it's not yours. I'm just stating a fact. Felix is tired. He's got too much on his mind. He will be fine. He's a very smart boy," mother said. "Eventually he will start failing school. Vika walks around again napping. You know, she's getting to that age that when she needs her mother a lot. Do you think it's easy for me to leave them?" Mums explodes. "Every time I leave, I cry halfway through. I roar into my pillow every day. And do you think it's easy for me to hurry? That is easy for me to roam around strangers' house. It's easy for me to clean up the rubbish that's not mine. And do you think it's easy for me to come back here?" Continues Mom's litany. "Everything is a kind of unorganized, all in chaos, and I'm just tired. I come back and the first thing I see is a big electricity bill." Does it really seem to you that I have an easy life? The next example is Barbara Kosmowska, Lonely.pl, when we can see crossing boundaries, but the role also interesting role reversal and growing up children. The protagonist's confusion often turns into their resourcefulness, evoking the will to survive in a challenging everyday life. This motivates the search for new days of living and concrete actions which reveal the maturity of the main characters. In the novel Samotni.pl, one of the characters, a teenager named Victor, takes care of his sick grandmother who was left in Poland after his mother moved abroad. The boy is mature, responsible, and patient, and he also provides emotional support by phone to his mother, who is lost in British reality. The emotionally unstable Polish emigrant changes partners and job, misses her son, but is unable to save money, so she does not visit her family in Poland, postponing her visit to her homeland indefinitely. Victor's conversation with his mother is full of anxiety, understatements, fragmented and disjointed. The mother recounts to her son the course of events in exile, telling him in a stream of consciousness full of emotional tension, information about immature decisions, unrealistic aspirations, unfulfilled dreams, and fantasies, but also remorse and exposed misfortunes that caused the emigrant's mental breakdown. They are constantly, I quote from the book, "They are constantly threatening the court, English fools. What do you mean, grandma in the hospital? Is she out? Praise God. Victor, you annoy me. Why no one told me? Well, yes, indeed, I changed my phone number after Jacob started blackmailing me. I forgot to inform you. I will give you a new one, just in case. I can't come, although I really, really dream about it. My dear son, you can't imagine how I miss you so much, so much." And the next example is crossing boundaries with emotions, loneliness, and longing for the mother. A pessimistic picture of children left behind in their homeland, brothers, the teenage Cyril, and the few year-old Nicodem is also presented by Zuzanna Orlińska in her novel Peace Clock, Baby Bird. The world is presented from the perspective of a teenagers. In the narrative, the author reveals the children's loneliness, outlining their inner dilemmas and mental confusion. The mother of both boys works in Ireland. The father is unable to cope with caring for the boys, so the brothers run away from home, intending to make their way to the British Isles. The children's view of the world seems determined by their longing for their mother. The boys dream of meeting her, they dream of the better reality, of parental love, imagining a future glamorous and prosperous life. They draw in their minds an imaginary space they know only from their mother's postcard descriptions. They describe an ideal Irish paradise and the family to be together. Nostalgia and the dreams of better life, Pisklak. With no specific address, no passport, and no money, the boys want to get to Ireland and at all costs without thinking about the consequences of their escape. To Ireland on foot, laughs Hanka. Maybe we will go by boat, replies Cyril. Oh, we will take a bus under the English Channel. And the passport, a ticket, the boy waves his hand as if he is being asked about insignificant details. Mom has been in Ireland for 4 years now. She works in the stud farm with horses. We got a postcard from her, but it fell into my water and got a bit wet. It's hard to read the address, but down here is definitely Donegal. My dear boys, this is a word from postcard. My dear boys, I'm sending you this postcard to let you know how nice it's here. I often think about how we should be here together and wander around these green hills. Nikush would definitely enjoy swimming in the ocean. I hope to see you soon. I'm giving you a big kiss and a hug, your mom. In the novel Pisklak, however, dreams surpass reality and show a failed attempt to enter adulthood. Mom doesn't know we are going to see her. She hasn't called in a long time. She will be surprised to see us. We are going to live with her. I can work with the horses too. I like animals. We will earn more together. We will rent a little house like this on the cliff, right on the ocean. Nikush will go to school. Maybe in time we will buy our own horses. They could graze near the house. There is a lot of good grass there. I will have a boat and go sailing. I've read on the internet that there are little islands scattered along the Donegal coast. We will sail to see them. Maybe we will end up living on one of those islands. The dreams. The initial confusion of the orphaned protagonist awakens the will to survive in a difficult everyday life, transforms into resourcefulness in their lives, and motivates them to seek new ways of living and concrete actions, which, however, reveal the immaturity of the teenagers and reveal an unformed, premature, as it were, attempt to enter adulthood. The boys' dreams surpass reality. The escape fails, social service intervene, and the boys return to their father. And now we are coming to the bigs for the young adults. The next example is Anna Cieplak, Rozpływaj się, Dissolve, published 2021 as a literary text, represent retrospective micro-stories from the perspective of adults. The story takes place in the Zagłębie and Upper Silesia region and shows the individual fates and the problems of growing up of the characters. The author places them in the social realities of the Polish countryside. I have to emphasize is the very poor region without job, without a future perspective, with huge unemployment. The four main characters, Alina, Marcelina, Janek, and Robert, are inhabitants of a tenement house in Ruda Śląska, young people born in the 1980s whose lives form a story about love, friendship, and parting, about the desire for change, dreams of better world, unwanted departures, and unexpected returns. The narrative is retrospective in nature. Partly, it's also like a stream of consciousness, deeply psychological, and shows the fate of the now adult protagonist over the period of 20 years from 1999 to 2019. The catalyst for the events in the novel is Omama, Robert and Janek's grandmother, who, while gainfully employed in Germany, unexpectedly returns to Poland and tries to reconnect the young people's shattered friendship. Crossing boundaries with traveling memory, recollections of mother and family home. The narrative is built as a series of micro stories which are constructed as the individual experiences of four adult characters. Alina's recollection of her mother is a part of the region's story as well as history, as well as a personal story. Watching her adolescent daughter Dorotka, Alina often thinks of her mother, who was rarely but by her side, and remembers her only as someone who sent her affectionate cards, parcels of colorful clothes, and the best treatment for teenage pimples. The memory of her mother is vague and unpleasant, and Alina's recalling the past makes her feel uncomfortable. She understands the pain of separation, but she's still missing her and described with deep pain. I quote, "When I was a child, she hardly touched me at all. And when I became teenager, she disappeared. In letters and on the phone, she pretended to be some exaggerated Silesian mother. I mean, it's a very good mother, which she never was." And now the figure of grandmother, crossing boundaries with strong personality of mentor, a role model in this Dissolve, the novel Rozpływa się. The name of mama is a word play. German Oma, grandmother, and Polish mama, mother. It's also worth noting that character of Omama, the emigrant, is an extremely strong personality, independent and autonomous, a person with a distinct character. Omama knows that she wants from the beginning, what she wants from the beginning is tough, consistent support main characters and becomes a mentor for the younger generation. She's the one who is talked about the thought of the most in the story, the one who is the engine of change, paving new paths, the matchless role model for Marcelina and Alina. One of her grandchildren emphasizes her greatness, saying that she was not a housewife, she was figure of economy. In Polish, the play of the words is very nice because she was not gospodyni, but she was like gospodarka. And Marcelina describes her role this way. Omama gave women back to the right to work and go away, also an intimidating force that makes them demand too much of themselves. I would emphasize here that this is a little bit like feministic way of independence, because it's also emphasized independent or interpretation, emphasize independent women, yeah, which has got power from Omama. The last example of my presentation is crossing boundaries and culture of remembrance, grandmother's care, memory and forgetting in the novel Scabs by Paulina Jóźwik, between past and presence. It's again, this book again show childhood from adult perspective. Here is the significant fragment of missing the parents. It was when we were left alone, me, my sister Irena, and my grandmother. At that time, my grandmother became a father and mother to us. Earnings tricked us into banishing our legal guardians to the west. That was the time when my father stopped saying that 6 months more and he will be back, and then we would be living in the palace fit for our village, in an insulated house with a pastel facade and planted with tall tuyas through which not a single neighbor's eye could see us. We will soak in an inflatable swimming pool and the water will reach our waist. Promises made, said Irka. We didn't have a phone at home, and for calls from abroad, my grandmother would make an appointment at the shop. There came a point when we stopped even raising our heads when she would return from promises that her father would come for Easter, and then that he would come for the first day of May, and maybe for All Saints' Days, and certainly for Christmas. Holy never, muttered Irena under her breath, so Granny stopped bringing news. Novel Strupki Scabs shows memory and mental images from the past, image of mythologized childhood, the concept of passage of time and individual memory. All these notions are rooted in polysensory narration. After many years of absence, Paula, the main character of the story, is coming back to her home village. And here is the quotation presenting in literary, very sensitive way her meeting with the past. I'm anonymous here. That's how I would like to think of myself. The village doesn't know about my previous years, where I was, how I lived. Now it will be open a window and look at me. Look at past me from fence to fence, from mouth to mouth. They will filter me until I am a new person for their use, for my return home. I opened the gate and walked into the garden. The house looked neglected. The grass reached past my ankles and overgrew the path. Paint was coming off the fence like a snake skin. Only that underneath, instead of the fresh patterns, the grayed out wood had emerged. Tall rudbeckias grew around the walls. These yellow flowers have always been a symbol of summer for me. In some places, the thin stems sloped to the ground, unable to support the heavy heads. And one description of the room from the childhood. Fortunately, the grandmother's room was entered directly from the hallway. I opened the door and stepped inside. A familiar chill touched me. It was the same chill that, as a child, relieved me after the day's exposure to the sun, and in the winter forced me to keep adding wood to the cooker. There was no one in the room. The emptiness was filled by the sounds of clocks timed in two different rhythms. Only Holy Mary looked out of the picture frame with a black and white gaze that I was still afraid of, despite the years. My grandmother had always feared that the sight of the Virgin Mary would reach me no matter where I was. Novel Strupki we can analyze from the perspective of discourse of memory, like individual memory, palimpsest memory, recollections and rememory. And we can emphasize here, in fact, four narrative roles of memory: retrospective, reconstructive, deconstructive, and constructive of past memories. Thanks to these categories of memory, I will say that this as a tool, memory as a tool for interpretation. Narrative is bringing together scattered scenes from family history, building a family tree, connecting generations, trying to find family truths, unfulfilled loves and desires, overcome trauma, and understand oneself. The topos of childhood and individual identity. The mythologization of childhood in novel Strupki Skaps is an attempt to restore, reconstruct what has been lost forever, longing for childhood, seen from an adult perspective, coming to terms with the past. For example, Euro orphanhood is very dramatic, and the traumatic separation caused by migration for many families that time, and the search for discovery of one's own identity. Finally, the main protagonist, Paula, reconciled with her sister and accustomed to her father's new partner, looks to the future with a great optimism. After all, her deceased grandmother's house is still her home. The symbolic look in the mirror by both sisters shows a breakthrough in discovering their own identity. I quote, "I looked at me and my sister, reflection, wondering how much time must pass before you can look in the mirror and see yourself in it. How much time must pass before you can be sure of who you really are." Coming slowly to the conclusion, the new figure of new home, memories of home and the place of childhood, a space of the sacred, a mental image of good past, an ideal place of shared childhood experiences, become a locus amoenus, a metaphor for the security of peace and love, shelter, good feelings and emotions, and stability that is remembered as homeland. However, the concept of home is reconsidered in migration narratives. This is not always a home built by parents or even grandparents. This is a home built also by the protagonists and their newly formed community or peers with similar experiences replaces the traditional family unit. The new concept of home is created, leading to a desire for self-identification, where the clear understanding of self leads to the notion of resilient child, as we saw. New notion of home is created also by private individual memory, recollection from the past, or confrontation between mythologized image of home from the childhood with real home from presence, which can look different, can be destroyed, can mean in different way. It could be a happy home also without parents. Coming back slowly to conclusion, which show also change and exploring childhood in motion, in move. In these books, I mean, which I analyzed here, I quote, there are different ways of being a child at different kinds of childhood. A key issue for contemporary approaches is to understand that childhood is not universal. Rather, it's a product of culture and as such changes according to time and place. The narratives of migration identities from the perspective of concept of the childhood and adolescence in transnational families underline, or let's say accentuate, anthropological sensitivity, as we saw, and also intergenerational dialogues. The stories have axiological potential, present ethical dilemmas, provoke discussion on existential issues, refer to new sociology of childhood, relate to sociology of emotions, take into account the voice of the child perspective on reality, the child's perception of the world, and the actions of the children themselves. What helps them determining or specifying their self-positioning in the new world. Expose also the multiplicity of childhoods, its diversity and contextualization. As it was shown in this analysis, children create in these stories social reality by acting together, meanings created autonomously in interactions with adults, stories exposing also children's constructivism, issues of children's experiences, thoughts, feelings and emotions, taking into account children's opinions and ideas, their perspectives, and present the image of the child as a rich, active contributor to knowledge, culture, which helps create children's their own identity. This promotes a greater focus on making sure that the places where children live meet their needs. Crossing boundaries of childhood and adolescence, attempting to enter adulthood and discovering oneself in a new transnational reality as a way of forming a new fluid migrant identity in the context of engaged humanities. A summary. It's a processual and time-varying phenomenon. As a form of self-definition, on one hand, it's shown as an internal coherence. On the other, it always exposes a sense of separateness. In the social cultural context, migrant literature can be seen as a casual form, treated as a specific act of interpersonal communication, which makes a whole out of the fractured common reality, presupposes inclusiveness, allows borders to be crossed, including in the constructed reality also all others, the lost, the lonely, the excluded, the silent, and the weak. Reveals rich psychological portraits of the characters and the reflective existential type of narrative, provoking a discourse on the social competence of children and young people. Migration stories are often maintained in the poetics of intersubjective narration. I refer here to Magdalena Rembowska-Płóciennik and her article Narracyjne modele intersubiektywności, so narrative models of intersubjectivity, published in Teksty Drugie, implying projection and identification as two patterns of the narrator's mind reading of the protagonist, especially in the case of prose of Cieplak and Jóźwik. A summary: two transnational reality, three categories. The stories of the migration experiences of young people seeking their place in the contemporary transnational reality demonstrate their identity, can therefore be discussed in relation to three categories: psychological aspects, relations with other people, confrontation with cultural values, revealing new social competences of young adults who become active, presenting their agency, their self-positioning, which help to adapt new realities, thus building an image of the new transnational migrant identity. And in the end, I would like to show you something which we published as a final result of the previous grants, like last year. After 3 years, the volume of our Philotechnos, which you know the journal probably, some of you, published in 2024. The title was Migration Narrative, Staying, Leaving, Returning, and the Question of Migration, Invisibility in Children's and Adults' young adult literature, edited by Jessica Schwitek, Katarzyna Jędrzej from our partners for Sociologists of Childhood from Germany, and me and Mateusz Świetlicki. The guest contribution was in this volume very interesting. Our famous sociologists Krystyna Slany and Justyna Struzik with article Migrant Children's Agency in the Polish School and their sense of identity based on the results of the project Children Hybrid Integration, Learning, Dialogue as a way of upgrading policies of participation. There was also interview with Alexandra Koenig, who is a specialist in this field and also leading the project from German part. From Duisburg-Essen University, prepared by Jessica Schwitek and Katarzyna Jędrzej. Beyond the pages, children's and young adults literature and sociological research through the DOGI project, which shows the combination between 2 or 3 disciplines, which we wanted to show. So thank you very much for your attention. Sorry that it was too long. And in the end, I'm showing you references and bibliography. It's selectively. Of course, there are much more books which we use for this project. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dorota. Thank you so much for this rich talk. And thank you also for providing us with these sources. So now you can stop sharing your screen so we can see you. Fantastic.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks so much for this talk. And as I've already said, it was so rich, and your talks are always so rich. And the number of books that you analyze is just so surprising when you think about this topic, because I think that the moment we start thinking about migrants in Polish literature, Polish children's literature, we might assume that it's not a major topic in Polish children's literature, but because of your project, it turns out that it is one of the most important topics, one of the most important themes in contemporary Polish children's literature. So thank you so much for introducing our international audience to the Polish perspective, because our series is focused on the international voices. And today we wanted to introduce our international guests to Polish children's and young adult literature. So thank you, Dorota, once again for introducing our colleagues to our local perspective. And I see that we already have a question from our dear colleague, Svetlana Yefimova from Munich. So Svetlana, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much, dear Dorota. It was wonderful. It was extremely interesting and thought-provoking. And your examples are all fascinating. I have a question about the depiction of adult characters in these works. So you presented us a typology of different novels, so 4 categories, and these types are mostly based on different models of child characters, like a resilient child, a Euro orphan, a liminal child caught between cultures. And at the same time, it was also very interesting to see how adults are presented in these novels. And it seemed to me that we have also particular types of adults recurring in different books. For example, like a disoriented mother or a wise, strong grandmother who takes on the responsibility for her grandchildren. So I'm just wondering, because this huge corpus of 60 novels, whether we could also maybe propose a kind of typology of adult characters. So would you say many of these books are similar in dealing with the depiction of adults, or maybe are there major differences, like different types of the depiction? So I'm curious about this.
Okay. Thank you, Svetlana, for these interesting questions. Of course, when we are talking about separation between children and adults, we can't of course, avoid to describe the figure of adults. And there are many different characters, to be honest. It depends also if the books are for younger children or for young adults. I put here different, the books for different ages, let's say. Some of them are for younger children, not very young, but let's say 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. Some of them are for the older one. And I think that adults are different. Some, the figures of adults, some of the parents in the books are going abroad and they have a contact with children somehow. They are frustrating. They feel lonely abroad because the job is not easy. And sometimes they are coming back. They would like to come back, but they have to stay abroad because they need money. And this is like simply for economical reason, is the separation is still go on. As we saw this frustrating mothers, let's say in Zielone Martensy, Green Martens, when mother is completely, she's fed up, she's absolutely despair and frustrated, but she has to stay abroad. Even with the grandmother who takes care of children, it's another adult, but mostly positive. I would say that grandparents are really positive characters. We were discussing, I think even in Paris on the last Congress with Mateusz, about the figure of grandmothers, that it's a separate story, and I would like to focus, if it will be a little time, for adults, but especially grandparents, yeah? Especially grandmothers, yeah? Sometimes there is also grandfather, sometimes, but more of them are grandmothers, and they are really not suffering, but make a sacrifice, let's say, to stay in Poland and to take care of the children. So it's a very positive way. But I would also emphasize the figure of mothers, maybe not fathers, the adults, which were already done by Matka Migrantka by Sylwia Urbańska. There is an article articles made by sociologists, because usually mothers are working abroad. I mean, mothers for children are, let's say, not more important, but if mothers are absent, of course, children are sometimes suffering more than if the father is absent. Of course, I don't want to simplify this because it's more complex situation, but in this sociologist research by Sylwia Urbańska, when we have the different roles on the families based on Matka Migrantka, mother migrant, yeah, which shows that they are very somehow also solid and independent, responsible abroad. They can work really strong, and it's a positive way when they are working abroad. But there is one frustrated mother in the book Lonely PL, which really, it's extremely like getting mad or showing that she absolutely can't accept herself or feel okay in emigration because she can't find a job. She's changing partners. She doesn't save money, and Victor, who is teenager, by phone try to help the mother, despair mother. So in that context, the mother is out of the game. She's really lost, completely lost in reality. So the emigration has different phases for adults. Some of them are okay, some of them are finding partners and the second family, even like with a beautiful book. It's a poetical prose, Kasieńka, Kate, written by Sarah Crossan. In fact, it's an Irish author, but we have this book in our corpus because the story is about Polish family. Yeah, the main protagonist, Kasieńka, is going with her mother to England to looking for the father, who is simply leaving them. He left family. He found another woman, and he's now married with another. He's married with another woman, British, and he doesn't want to come back home, but the mother and the daughter looking for him. So in fact, the first idea was to go abroad for earning money, but finally he really has a nice new family, nice family. And the girl, the main protagonist, is looking for the father. So there are different, I would say, there are different figures, the different images of an adults, a positive, negative. Sometimes the parents are not coming back and they have no any contacts. There is a very sad story called Nigdzie by Boryczka. I didn't analyze here, but it's extremely sad. It's simply they are going abroad and they are never contacting a girl and coming back after many, many years. So this is a kind of frustration, traumatic childhood, but they have a good life in Germany. And in fact, the story doesn't tell, the author doesn't tell, the narrative, it's structured in such a way that we don't know why the parents, in fact, the parents simply lost contact with the real family and the grandfather. So in that context, psychologically, the novels, as I mentioned, has really are like psychological. It's the genre. It's really psychological, deep psychological portraits. I would say not only children but also adults. So it shows the inner dilemmas and difficulties with making decision, coming back or stay, coming back and stay. Some parts of the stories are very set in that context with a lot of emotions and feelings. But some of them are also showing this positive way of the children, I would say resilience. I would say that some, maybe even most of the stories try to show that there is a way to survive, there is a way to adapt yourself abroad or in Poland, not always with a full happiness, but just to show agency, child voice in the discussion and practical way of for surviving. So it's different. I would say different, but for me, interesting is the grandmother figure. I think I would also focus on mothers, mothers, but also grandmothers. It's a separate story, and there are many still materials which can be analyzed. I don't
Thank
know
you
if
so
I
much.
answer you. It's so rich.
Yes.
There are so many texts that it's in my mind that I think it's a big spectrum, wide spectrum of this, also adult characters.
Yes, absolutely. May I maybe ask a very small follow-up question? Because it's very interesting, like you mentioned, there are positive images and negative images of adults. And the grandmother is particularly positive. But if we take, let's say, this negatively depicted mother, would you say it is a kind of social criticism, or maybe if we think about ethical implications, it is a way to foster empathy in a child reader, like empathy with the suffering of these adults abroad, like the mother of Victor, for example, in this British reality. So is it criticism or empathy?
I would say that the second, the empathy. I would say that there is something like maybe consider, maybe pay attention for this kind of adults' frustration. Yeah, the children maybe has to understand, or let's say try to understand, why parents are not so happy all the time because they have their own problems. And in that context, I would say that it's the children or teenagers are mature. Yeah, they are growing up faster. They try to like Victor or other also children. They understand that it's not easy for them to be abroad. So I would say that this is a kind of empathy with adults to see the full character or the deeper portrait. I don't want to say that the mother of Victor is really bad character. It's really, she's lost. Yeah, she's lost. When she's telling what is going on, she's very honest and sincere to say, okay, I lost a job and I have a new friend, but he also betrayed me and the owner of the company didn't pay money and she tries, and I think it's rather empathy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dorota. We have another question from our dear colleague Smiljana. So Smiljana, go ahead.
Thank you, everyone. And just let me see some things. I need to allow camera to work, I think. Okay, but it doesn't. Never mind. So maybe you can just hear me. Okay, I'm sorry, it doesn't work.
Yes, we hear you.
Yes,
We
that's
hear you.
fine.
Yes, thank you, Dorota, for such a really wide presentation and such a deep analysis of so many novels, and this is really fascinating. I have two follow-ups, perhaps, or maybe questions, if you wish. If I have understood correctly, so your corpus, the novels you analyzed, are all or mostly about Polish children and Polish families who get separated due to the work migration, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
this is very interesting to me because, for instance, Croatia also had a lot of families who were separated due to migration, work migration of the parents. But this topic is not that emphasized in Croatian children's literature. So in connection with that, I would like to, yes, and I also find it very interesting that you introduced this aspect of orphans and orphan characters, functional orphans, who actually become the main sort of focus of many of these novels. And there has been a long tradition of orphan literature in the past, and this is interesting to me that it has further developed in Polish literature in this way, which is very contemporary and up to date, I think. But my question is, are there any books that you've come across dealing with the migrant children from other countries into Poland? And if not so many, why do you think that is so? So that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miliana, for this question, because it's another corpus of the text. There are many books about refugees or immigrants, the children who are now in Poland. No, especially that many things changed after Poland accessed European Union, of course, so we have more and more guests. So there are the children from Ukraine, the children from Syria, like the Kotka Rima i Obrazki, it's about Syrian family, or Teraz tu jest nasz dom by Gawryluk, it's about Ukrainian children in Poland. There are many, I would say, but we didn't want, because it's a different perspective to analyze this topic. For this project, we chose the children who are from transnational families, Polish, let's say parents are going abroad, or one parent. Okay, this is, of course, there are different stories, like the parents are going abroad and children are staying in Poland, which we call them Euro orphans. Europejskie sieroty. It's very pejorative meaning, but okay, it's in sociology, it exists, but we didn't analyze in this project. I wrote 1 or 2 articles about this, let's say, children who are in Poland, so in the intercultural context, to show how Polish people reacting last time. It was even by Cezary Harasimowicz, Chłopiec z lasu. Nie wiem, czy Państwa, I don't know if you remember, maybe Mateusz or Ela or people from Poland heard about this beautiful book about the refugees on the Polish-Bielorussia border. The Boy from Forest. It's written by Cezary Harasimowicz, who is very good author, very, very good. It's really extremely wonderful writer. I would say with previous his books like Mirabelka or Tigris, now it's The Boy from Forest. It's very difficult topic, and it shows this book shows, for example, the immigrants, refugees who are passing the border, crossing the border in Polish-Bielorussia border in this part. So there are such books, but I can describe more. But for this analysis, we chose a little bit different perspective. So in our corpus, there are also some. I remember. I mean, we know also very good book, but we will not put to analysis. It's a Romanian author, Lung. Dziewczynce, która, what will be the English title, która bawiła się w Boga, about the girl who was playing as a god, or with God, like dreaming about the mother who went abroad. It's Romanian. It's during time of Ceausescu. It's shocking. It's very interesting book to show the poor in 80s, yeah, in Romania, and the mother of the girl is in Italy, working abroad, but she is at home with her father. So we know some of the stories. Yeah, we will put in the context, but for this analysis, let's say, to see also the Polish reality or model of families in this migration separation. But we started, this was also a question 5 years, 6 years ago, when we started to talk with our German colleagues, if I can make one, if I can give two more sentences or 3 more sentences, that the idea of this Polish-German project, because our partners are from Germany, Sociologists of Childhood, it was only, they wanted to focus only on the story about Polish immigration in Germany. And we had many books on that. But because the times is changing, and we just convinced them that we have many immigrants in Great Britain, in Holland, and many other countries in Europe. Still, because this topic is still going on. Of course, the model of this migration is different, as I mentioned. It's different. It's not maybe so dramatic. There are many ways of communication, like via internet or flights and so on. So it's not so traumatic like in 90s. But we convinced them that it's not emigration in Germany, because we have immigrants in many countries, in Italy. And it's also the model of the family, which is not going only for economical reason to work abroad, but also kind of contracts. Like I mentioned with this Moje Bullerbyn, it's an ideal situation because parents are doctors and they are just working in the hospital. They have a beautiful life. The village is like paradise, the village. So there is absolutely no problems, no conflicts. This is really, I think it's too ideal even, but it shows something that it can happen when parents are going for the job, and everything is well done, prepared, no trauma. Just, of course, missing friends from the school, missing grandparents, but the life is beautiful. Let's say it's, of course, adaptation in the new environment. So there are different perspectives.
Thank you so much for this, for your answer to this great question. And thank you, Smiliana. I know we can see you, so it's lovely to see you.
Yes, I managed to change something on my screen. Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you, Dorota, for your answer. So there is obviously the difference between war migration migrants and job migrants. And it is also interesting to me that you mentioned that migrants from Poland abroad sometimes have very nice lives, and there is not much trauma, which is also an interesting aspect. But I think this is you have really answered my question very well, and thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you for question.
Thank you so much. And I think that we have time for the very last question. So Estefania, please go ahead. Because your hand is raised. So yeah. So your question is going to be the last one, so it better be good.
Well, I'm very new to this topic, but I find it very interesting. specifically when you talked about the intergenerational relationships that are across these books. And I wanted to ask, like, because you're talking a lot about the child or the teenager with their family members, and how that relations are. But is there also like a mirror or a different type of relationship with the child characters and the adults of the the place where, like, the new home or the outer society of their family, and how do those relations differ, and do they like uh, have any impact on like the child or like the character feeling of inclusion or the building of that new home that you were talking about before?
Mm. In fact, I didn't, the sounds is so bad for me. I'm sorry. I didn't no understand the question because the voice, I don't know, with the microphone, something is wrong. And you can maybe repeat, or Mateusz, if you understood, maybe you can. Sorry, it's not that I didn't understand your, I mean, but the voice are so, the quality of the voice is so bad that I didn't.
Yes, now it's better.
Can
you try
now
again?
it's better? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Now it's better.
Yes.
I will
So,
just be close to the screen. I will be close to the screen.
no,
You can
I
repeat,
also
please.
changed my mic. But yeah, it was really in relation to the intergenerational relationships that you mentioned, because I feel like you talked a lot about the child or teenager relation with their family members that are adults. But I was wondering if there is also a mirroring or like a different type of relationship that is portrayed in the books from between the child and the outer society and the adults on the outer society, either in their own place when they are left at Poland, or when they also move away and they are also migrants. And if those relationships have any impact in like the inclusion or the building of that new home for the character.
Yes, thank you. Now I understood. I mean the voice, your voice and the sounds. So yes, there are many adult characters which are involved also in this, to say, the situation of migration and abroad. Also, the children meet some peers, the friends in the school, of course, but also adults who help them somehow, other adults, not only family members, but also neighbors from the local communities, for example, like this Natalia in Bullerbyn, Moje Bullerbyn in Swedish village. There are some adult friends. One is a ballerina, the dancer from Lviv, Selma from Ukraine, and they become the friends because Natalia likes dance, so she become the friends of this lady. But also in the book Kasieńka, Kate, written by Sarah Croissant, there are also neighbors simply of with the flat when the Polish characters rent a flat in England. So yeah, there are many also adults who help. I don't know if you just asked me about the adults character who help them, or some.
Yeah, it's like in those relationships, how do those adults that are outsiders of the family, let's say, uh, impact the child or the characters like feeling of inclusion or the building of that new home? Like, you're mentioning that they are friends or helpers in that way,
Yeah, the
and
helpers
also
and the friends.
so it is a little bit like it is quite different than with the parents, that sometimes the parents are more um how to say it, like, are not so helpful sometimes, and they kind of need empathy from the child. The other adults are is a different type of relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, it depends if we are talking about the children who are going abroad with parents. or if children who are staying at home, but parents are going abroad, yeah, because there are two different situations. So in both of the cases, I would say that some of the adults in the stories are helpful, and the girl, like chłopiec z Lampedusy, the Angelika, the Polish girl who lives in this island, she has not only girlfriends, colleagues in the school, but also some adults, teacher in the school. So she acclimatized or adapting herself in the new environment. Her mother is working, but she feels more or less okay with adults. So in these stories which I analyze, yes, I would say that they show positive way for the emigrants abroad, small emigrants abroad, but also in Poland with the book of Cieplak dissolved. Yeah, there are many adults who in the small town, because it's really like a forgotten area somewhere, nowhere, the place like nowhere, and the people are being together. Yeah, they are very helpful. In the smaller communities, much easier. I mean, I would say the provincial aspects, countryside, even if this Ruda Śląska is very small, you know, the Silesia part is very poor, but the people are together. When children are left behind and they feel like orphans, some adults from the neighborhood are helping them. In this story, which I presented here, also Ma być czysto Anny Cieplak, it's another story. I should be clean.
Thank you so much, Dorota, for your answer. I think that you've managed to address this question, but I also think that there are many other things that can be said about these books. For example, the relationships between different children. I mean, children representing different backgrounds, cultures, ethnicities. So we're dealing with. I mean, you talked about generational relations, but a lot can also be said about, relations between representatives of, the very same generation. So this is such a rich project, and we're looking forward to hearing more about your project or your projects, because you talked about two big projects. So we're looking forward to hearing more about them in the future. And on behalf of our center, we would like to thank you so much for being such an important part of our center, of our Wrocław team, and for being here with us. So I think that every single person who is doing children's literature study instantly thinks of you the moment they think about Wrocław. So I'm very happy that you gave a talk about Polish children's literature. And I think that it's also symbolic that you gave this talk on migrants on February 24th, which is an important date considering what's happening in Ukraine. So I think that the symbolism is there. So thank you so much, Dorota, and we're looking forward to seeing you in person very, very soon, because because we do tend to see one another quite often because we live in the same city, and we work at the same university, but different faculties. But thank you so much.
Thank you once more for invitation. Thank you once more. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dorota. Thank you all for being with us this evening. Thank you so much.
Bye bye. Dziękuję bardzo.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.